Thanks for joining us once again here at Chopping It Up for another mini episode of Prime Cuts. This week we're covering episode 7, The Viewing of Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities. Episode 7 was directed by Panos Cosmatos. I'm sure I'm butchering the pronunciation. An Italian-Canadian director who directed the balls trippy horror film Mandy. This 2022 miniseries is currently streaming on Netflix if you want to check it out. As a reminder, Prime Cuts is designed as a quick-hitting, free-form conversation where we discuss a breadth of horror mediums, including anthologies, theatrical releases, graphic novels, shorts, and other forms of media. There is no set agenda here as we shoot from the hip and provide any gleaned insights from our respective viewings. So, guys, first, has anyone, I know the answer to you, Jazz, but has anyone seen this before?
I didn't remember it that well, but I watched the whole series through before we did this, and then I rewatched it just this episode a few times once we settled on doing it.
And of course I've seen it.
Yeah, this was a jazz special. I've never seen it, so this was my first viewing of it.
You've seen Mandy though by now, right? Have you?
Well, so that was the thing. You recommended Mandy to me probably now 2 years ago.
Long time ago, yeah.
So some point over the haze of COVID. And let me say that I turned on Mandy and was transfixed with it, but I want to say I only made it about halfway through. I have yet to revisit it. The reason was that I'd taken some prescription medication. And it was very difficult to follow. Very, very difficult to follow. Now, I was enthralled with it. I wasn't sure what the hell was happening, which is a good transition to me watching The Viewing. And I'll just go ahead and start off for anyone who hasn't seen it, or if you have seen it. What the fuck was happening?
Well, I think, the literal recap, obviously, which I assume you followed this much.
Well, give a synopsis to everyone real quick, and then we'll.
Okay, so there's this obscenely wealthy guy who invites a bunch of people to his house. Basically, like he literally sends them like these invitations, these tickets, that you're invited to. I think it's called the Sandpiper House. And all these different people like gather in some garage in LA and get picked up by one of his employees in one of those old school like mystery mobile vans. The whole thing takes place in like 1970 something, obviously, right? Something like that. So then they show up to his house, and it's like it's a crazy house, and the way that the director Panos Cosmatos has like lit everything, which is very much in keeping with his other stuff that he's done, is this very like dreamy, drippy, saturated with like one color usually vibe. So the whole thing has this sort of like trippy, dreamy vibe from the get-go, and like all these people turn out to be like experts in their respective fields, like some telepath-ish guy. There's like an astrophysicist, some music, Quincy Jones kind of music producer person, some
Eric
famous
Andre,
novelist. Yeah, Eric Andre, the man. And eventually, the main guy, the rich guy, played by Peter Weller, who just like chews up his role.
RoboCop or
playing
RoboCop.
AKA RoboCop. He's kind of playing himself.
That's what I thought, Sled.
Yeah. Like rolls in and kind of gives them the lay of the land. And there's a huge amount of like table setting or just mood setting or just general Panos Cosmatos weirdness of just like them talking about random shit. And this guy kind of like laying the foundation of why he's brought them here, which eventually turns out to, way down the line, like 40 minutes into the episode, revealed to be, some meteorite of unknown origin that they're trying to like figure out, and he spent like some obscene fortune on acquiring it, and he thinks there's something special to it, and they're trying to crack its code basically, which they eventually do accidentally when Eric Andre's character blows the smoke from his J into the meteorite, which wakes it up. And what comes out is a kind of like a cosmic horror nightmare situation. which kills several of them, takes over Peter Weller's body, and then chases the survivors kind of like out of the building. So that's the literal, I mean, of what happens, but yeah.
Right. I mean, so what, so what is Cosmatos trying to say? What is the message? What is the text? I mean, what is the subtext? The text you just walked through, but
yeah,
what are we talking about here? What is the...
To the extent, so I mean, I don't know that there has to be, because it's just like a 1 hour episode, but to the extent you can say something about that, I think it's basically something like the classic hubris of man, kind of like reaching for the stars or trying to crack the unknown, especially for like selfish greed reasons, and gets his comeuppance, basically, in the form of like death, or in Peter Weller's.
Is he still conscious because he's saying "help me" and stuff after this thing took him over, isn't he?
Unclear. I mean, I think like that's meant to be part of the horror or unknown of the situation. Is like three of them die, two of them escape. His assistant dies. The guy who drove them there, he tries to shoot him up with his golden AK. Hector
yes,
with his golden AK.
Was there supposed to be any real people? I mean, that was one of the things I was wondering.
No, I think it's all fictional.
Or are they supposed to be replications of some sort of like, I feel like
they're totems
based on somebody, right?
Yeah, but I think
Hector,
they're not...
to me, when I looked at him, I was like, oh, that's what's the fucking Colombian drug lord's name? Like he looked
Noriega.
Pablo Escobar.
Yeah, they made him look a lot like Pablo Escobar, not as husky, but had a bit of a similar vibe. I thought the writer looked visually to me like what I remember seeing pictures of Richard Matheson looking like, who was also like kind of he wrote about a lot of horror and stuff like that, but was also kind of a cynic. If you looked into his actual, like everything could be explained with science and it was all kind of bullshit, like kind of like was underlying a lot of his writing.
I didn't pick up on it that clearly, but to me they were all totems of like representations of their respective fields.
The spoonbender guy, that was like
Uri Geller.
That was like a kind of person that was, profligating throughout the world.
Yeah, and you could argue that the astrophysicist was like a stand-in for like a Carl Sagan type or something like that. So, I mean, whether they're literally that or whether like here or what were like people who kind of lived slightly at the fringe, but were also considered experts of that era. Like those are like, as you say, Sled, like these are like those types of characters. And like the music producer, Quincy Jones-ish or whatever you want to say. I think
the reason why he gathers them together, I'll just play cynic or whatever.
Sure.
I mean, and the reason ostensibly, or at least that he gives you why he gathered this group of people together is because they're experts in their respective fields. Mm-hmm. And he goes on at length about that. The author, the music producer, that's why I want examining the meteorite that has crashed to Earth that I've taken that might represent like what? No, they're not. What? That's those. You've got, how many people were there? 5 of them? 4 of them?
Let's see, the 5 or 6. Yeah.
5 or 6. And you got 2 or 3 slots filled by people like that, like alongside the astrophysicist.
Well, I mean, to the extent to which you can say like he's trying to like create a message with the thing, which I don't think he is. I think he's just sort of having fun with the 1 hour thing and setting a super weird mood and vibe and having a good time. But to the extent that he is, I would say like it's like here's this ultra rich billionaire who's out of touch and who's basically just using his wealth to kind of like show his ass in terms of power, and just like having a good time. Because when he talks about like he basically talks about how he collects people to some extent, right? Mm-hmm. Like, oh, I this building was designed by an architect that you'll never hear of because he's kind of like now in my personal payroll.
And the album that you're listening to, you'll never hear that album.
Exactly. And then he talks to the Eric Andre character like, oh, I have a new home coming up at, I don't know, Ecuador or wherever it was. And like, I want you to do the music for that. And he's just sort of assumed that it will be the case that the guy will do it, Right. So I think that his sort of like role is just like out of touch, crazy rich guy who's just like, doing whatever he wants. And
but like, why does it, again, if the given reason is like, I want sort of an appraisal, either literally or figuratively, of what this item is worth, I want you to see it, I want to explore it, maybe I can get something for it, maybe I can do something with it. like, then why do you need to shoot them up with heroin, have them snort coke, have them fucking blow trees, have them, like, why are we doing all of that in succession?
Some of it came off as like Jay mentioned, like hubris earlier. Like that's a lot of it is like this guy, like he thinks he's such a fucking wizard expert, but he's like ultimately brought in a bunch of people who are a bunch of like, other than the astrophysicist, a bunch of like, they're pseudoscientists kind of jerk offs. Like they're experts, but and he's created this philosophy in his own head about why these people would be important and like for having this thing get open. I don't know. And then he obviously didn't think whatever was going to happen is what happened. I mean, I doubt he opened it up thinking that he was going to be what I mean, and his doctor lady, the one who was, I guess, supposed to be, I don't know if she was supposed to be Libyan because she was with Gaddafi.
Yeah.
But she obviously thought she had a very high like level of arrogance also around her, and like she thought she could go and communicate with the thing. After it already melted one dude's face and blew the other guy's head up, she's over there like
caressing.
She was hot. I mean, if I
was gonna say she's been successful, likely
gone for it, but like but
well,
it melted her fucking face too. Like
it did. So I think so. Again, like I don't think. In this case, the rich guy, Peter Weller's character, I don't think he was actually trying to like crack the code. I think basically he's so rich and has conquered all aspects of human endeavors in some sense. He's basically just like sort of in search of new experiences. And the act of watching the act of controlling these people, these titans of their respective fields, and like holding them in the palm of his hand, in this like sunken room, almost like, they're sort of captured. Yeah. And sort of like, that is both a power play thing. And it's like, he gets to like, I'm experiencing something new through these people, both through like holding them captive for the thing and the way that they're reacting to this object, which I don't think like it is a mystery. And he's like, it'd be cool. But like, clearly if he was serious about cracking the mystery, that's not how he'd go about it. Right.
So, I think that's an interesting point, and I think that's the through line for this, I guess, is what I'm getting is like Cosmatos likes to play with that understanding, and like he also it seems to me is like there's a little bit of the Emperor Wears No Clothes. Like whatever the MacGuffin is that he's created is a hazy picture of what the people are discovering and by extension what we're discovering through watching it. And then I guess, because we try to move through this stuff quickly on Prime Cuts, the stuff that we haven't touched on at all, which is really how Cosmatos makes his bones and what makes this, despite the fact that it's a 53-minute long episode and nothing happens for 40 plus minutes, how he makes his bones is he is beautiful with his directing. Like you said,
it's gorgeous.
The ambiance, the music, the sound, the sight,
the performances, what he gets out of the people.
But the lights, like when she lights her lighter or when there's a tail light and it stretches horizontally in that sort of hazy trail, like you'd see if you were tripping on acid, which I have read that you do. And like, and like he gets that. It's really like an enveloping, entrancing kind of atmosphere that he sets.
And I think that's the main draw of the episode. It's like it's there's so little Panos Cosmatos out there. He's made like 3 things basically, and like then there's this, and it's like you get another bite at the apple of Panos Cosmatos, who I absolutely adore. I just love all his stuff. It's like amazing. Mandy's.
So you mentioned one of Mandy earlier. I haven't seen that. It's good.
Oh yeah, it's.
Well, did you like this, Sled?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it could be explored more. I mean,
so if you like this,
to work with, so
yeah, if you like this, I'm sorry to step on your toes, Jazz, but there's no doubt you'll like Mandy. I mean, you got Nicolas Cage doing batshit crazy stuff.
His wiki page like mentions that the director admits a dislike for baby boomers' new age spiritual ideals.
Yeah.
So I think
there you go.
I think apparent in this movie, like
and it's a major through line in Mandy, I would say, and to an extent, his other film, Beyond the Black Rainbow, has elements of this as well. I would say, like, to the extent to which like there's a thread you can draw throughout all of the Panos Cosmatos stuff, beyond the beauty, beyond the trippiness, beyond all those things. It's like a reverence for mystery and an absolute
with a capital
hatred.
M, I think we have to
capital
say,
M,
right,
yeah. And an absolute hatred for like man's hubris against that in all its
snake oil salesman is like
in all its various dimensions. People who are hubristic about science, people who are hubristic about religion, people who are hubristic about like what their wealth can bring them when confronted with these great mysteries. People who are hubristic about like what drugs can open up for them and what they cannot. Like the main bad guy, you could say in Mandy, you know, is hubristic about like his cult, about like himself in this sort of way, and like, you know, what he's able to do. And so like, to me, like that's the sort of comeuppance elements that sort of happen. You know, the doctor, you know, is, you know, gets her comeuppance for her sort of like, I think some of the Gaddafi stuff is like sort of set up to say like, you have this loose morality of sort of like you know, like human rights or like the value of human life, you know, with your sort of like, oh, Gaddafi wasn't so bad and all this kind of stuff. And then like, you know, obviously the billionaire and his madness, but even like the arrogance of the novelist, how he's so cynical and dismissive of absolutely every fucking thing. He's like, it's this dumb rock. And then like the flip side of the sort of like bullshit snake oil of the Uri Geller type, you know, the telekinesis telepath guy, you know, his own kind of bullshit, you know, that the two survivors.
But there's also there's also Eric Andre in line with those, who gives you the soliloquy, which is basically the whole episode of, there's an emptiness inside of me and I can't fill it up no matter what I try to do. And that, I guess, is what we're talking about in this whole episode, right? That there are these holes that he's trying to fill, and whether it's not really so much, it's only in part about this object that he wants explored and identified and
exactly
maybe, you know, done with. But yeah, so it's really about those other, he can't fill them up. So through all of his excesses, all of the drug abuse, the obvious, like, you know, he's paying for this super hot woman to be around. Surely they're in bed together, you know, she's you know, enthralled with him because of his power and money. All of those things, it's all empty, right? There's nothing real in his life.
Exactly.
The lavish, the plants that he made his own plants that now grow a different way, and the atmosphere, all that. But there is the soundtrack that, going back to Cosmatos, he's got like yacht rock in there, and it somehow fucking works. It's just wonderful.
He's amazing. But yeah, I agree totally. It's like all these, you know, especially the ones who die, they have this hubris or emptiness, or like, you know, what are you trying to fill up? Right. You know, and even Eric Andre who says, but he's honest about it, you know?
Right.
And then you have the objective scientist who's like, she's appropriately reverential, I think, to the object and the unknown of it, you know? She doesn't think she can master it. She's just like, holy shit, this is something we don't know about. And I don't think it's an accident that those are the two that survive, you know?
Yeah, that was going to
be,
and
like, even like the sort of like hint at backstory of Hector, as he drops a tear over like, oh, he'll tell you a story about that golden AK, but it's Hector's story to tell. And there's like, you know, and there's like some trauma that he's trying to escape as well. And that's sort of why he goes back into the room in some sense. But it's like, and it's sort of like, hey, the universe is more powerful and doesn't give a shit about any of that stuff. Right.
I like that he doesn't. I mean, he's Cosmatos is the writer and obviously the director and obviously the writer. I like that he omits a lot of that stuff. He just eschews a lot of that backstory, because like we're left to fill that in and tell those stories to ourselves as viewers. And that so you know he respects us as an audience. And I really like that about it. You know, as far as recommending this for someone else, horror fans, I think you'd have to have a very specific taste. And I think the best way to find out if you like it or not is to listen to this Prime Cuts episode. I think we really got our arms around what he represents and how he presents it to the audience.
Well, I think let's talk about the end and the creature and the monster, and you know, in some sense, all that you can talk about.
Well, here I got a question for you guys.
Sure.
I know you guys will be better able to answer this than I will, because I didn't have much time to research this, and also in the spirit of Prime Cuts, where we really do just shoot from the hip here, I wasn't, you know, I don't want to do too much research, but somewhere on some Reddit thread, someone said this was from a figure from the Cthulhu mythos, which we've Handu, not Hindu, Handu. No, so if it's not ringing a bell for you guys, then it's totally wrong, because I would believe you over.
No, I mean, only in the sense that, and Sled will probably go even deeper on this than I could, but it's sort of like only in the sense that the Cthulhu mythos it's not like tight in the sense of here's the exact sort of like catalog of all the various things that is like totally accepted, and here's their exact qualities and how they appear and all this kind of stuff. Like there's so it's like sort of adjacent to the Cthulhu stuff in the sense that it's Lovecraftian, it's like cosmic horror-ish.
Yeah.
And then in the same way, like it's similar to, I think I recommended this to you on Netflix too, this series called Archive 81, which only ran for one season on Netflix, but it's also similar. There's like this ancient artifacty thing, and it has mysterious powers, and there's hints that it's alien and all this kind of stuff. And like that's also sort of Lovecraftian and sort of cosmic horror, but not strictly speaking like, oh, here's one of the Cthulhu gods.
Right.
So
yeah, I mean, that'd be my same take. I mean, it is Lovecraftian, but as Jay mentioned, like the Cthulhu mythos, like that's like if you tried to narrow it down to like what H.P. Lovecraft actually wrote about, it's much smaller than like what it's been expanded on. So there's people that have extrapolated a lot out of that. I mean, the creature does a lot of the stuff going on and mimics it, although set in the 70s, obviously, so way past when he died. But there wasn't anything I was like, oh, that's supposed to be something that I noticed.
Okay. There was an Ambrose Bierce. Someone said that I read somewhere that Ambrose Bierce wrote initially about this monster. Again,
interesting. I'd have to look that up. I'd be interested because I do like my Ambrose Bierce as well. But yeah.
Well, what's your take, Sled, on who or what this thing represents, or was it just the devil, or just an evil creature, or
yeah, I mean, it's obviously supposed to be some sort of, I mean, from a Lovecraftian standpoint, like it's definitely supposed to be, I mean, getting at the very essence of the movie is like things you don't understand, things that destroy your mind. If you try and understand it, they don't really make sense. Maybe there's parts of it that, like, when it first comes out, it's like, oh, those kind of look like horns, but then they turn into like tentacle, like it's, and maybe so it's trying to find that line, I think, between things you don't understand, that maybe the familiar also, and maybe some sort of idea is supposed to be implanted in you. It's like, oh, well, maybe this is sort of a inspiration for these things that we do know in our common mythology. I don't know. Like I thought about that just with how they made it look so demonic to some extent with the appearance of it. I thought maybe it was supposed to be, like this is something we don't understand, but it is, it's something maybe people have seen before and have put into their artwork and things like that in the past.
What was crazy was
supposed to have some sort of control of electricity. Like when it comes out of the sewer at the end, I thought they were making
it's feeding on it or something.
The neighborhood around there was kind of flickering. It melts Pablo Escobar Jr. with electricity. So I mean, but they also made a point, like it moves really slow, so I didn't know if that was maybe also like supposed to be symbolic of something, or like the way it's just like very ponderous and all
well, it comes out of that drain pipe, that sewage pipe at the end, and then he pans back and you see at night this nightscape of this city, which looks,
it's LA.
It's LA, but it looks like an apocalyptic.
Like Batman-esque.
So I'm just like, well, how is this thing going to take over the fucking city? It moves slower than I do in the 4-year.
But how are you going to stop it? In that sense, it's the slow moving part is sort of similar to zombie slow moving. It's like there's a thing, you see it coming, you know exactly where it's going, but you can't stop it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, in that sense, that's, and we're going to be, or depending on exactly the order in which we air things, we're going to be talking about some other cosmic horror stuff in The Thing and stuff like that. And I think it's that's the sort of thing it represents to me. It's like nature is beyond you. The universe is beyond you. Your categories, your attempt to sort of compartmentalize these things, in your little brains, humans, nature doesn't care. Now you're its food. Now you're its fodder. Now you're its source of energy. That's it.
No, I think that captures it nicely. I mean, I would just say, God, I can't even remember. We're doing machetes for this one. I think machetes for prime cuts and meat cleavers for our standard programming. Oh God, 3.3 Machetes for me. Only downgrading because I have to be in a certain mood to watch that. Like he's such a specific auteur in the way he does things. If you're not in the right mindset or it's not something that's particularly up your alley, it's going to be a tough watch for you. I like it, but only I have to go. I will go back and rewatch the rest of Mandy and actually start from the beginning. But that's where I come out. What about you guys?
I think that's fair. Like even I who love Panos Cosmatos, it's like I do have to be in a mood to watch this.
Yeah.
Like this isn't something that I can necessarily just be like, I can watch it whenever I feel like I need to be entertained. So yeah, I gave it a 3.4 machetes for me. So
Yeah, I mean that sounds good. I go 3.5. I mean, I had to watch it admittedly a bunch of times. Like because I tried watching it in the background and it kept being over.
No.
It kept like being over. And I was like, what the fuck? Wait a minute.
What I missed the whole thing.
Like, yeah, like it was like, cause it's too much. There's like, yeah, there's not a ton going, like there's a lot of build and then things go pretty quickly and then it ends out and it's like, wait a minute. Like, okay. Like, so.
He has it almost, I don't want to say static, but it has like it's really entrancing. It's like something that you're not.
He really makes you feel in a way that you are one of the people invited. Like the way in which he does is like tracking shots, like that go into like that crazy room, which I would love to have that room built at some point. It's just an amazing.
You're a psychopath,
room.
Of course you are.
And then the tracking shot that when the doors open to the room with the artifact and the slow tracking shot to the artifact, he just makes you feel like you're there. And I'm also just like an incredible sucker for any kind of movie or show or anything where it's like a bunch of strangers get invited to some weird person's house and get there and ultimately get their comeuppance. It's just always like, that's my jam. Yeah, but you do have to be, in a mood, mindset, but I think it's like, yeah, if you like Mandy, you like this. I think if you like any kind of cosmic horror stuff, you're gonna probably at least somewhat enjoy this, whether you like Color Out of Space or like The Thing, stuff like that. I think you'll probably get a kick out of this. Even Alien, the whole. I think it's that kind of mood, that kind of vibe. So.
All right, gentlemen. Appreciate the conversation. Let's keep it tight and short like we always do here on Prime Cuts. Thank you all for listening once again, and we will come back to you shortly with another episode of Prime Cuts. Thanks.